We're going to go on to our next juicy conversation. We're going to speak to Dirk Roux. He's going to speak to us from SprintHive. The topic is efficiencies in automating credit assessments while mitigating fraud. Oh, do we have two speakers?
Yeah.
Yes.
Thuso.
It's Dirk 1 and Dirk 2.
Dirk 1, no.
Thuso.
Thuso.
Yeah.
Right? I'm going to let you guys introduce yourselves. Awesome.
Right.
Let's go.
I also didn't leave. I forgot my jacket. Uber is now in Riviersonderend, so since I'm from Cape Town. Hope you'll still respect me.
Yeah, no, but I always say that making a switch from financial services to the fintech space, you don't need to put a jacket anymore,
Yeah.
right? Yeah. So I'm Thuso Segopolo. I am the Chief Growth Officer at SprintHive. We've been friends for 14 years plus,
Yeah.
and we always find a way to work together. Yeah?
Yeah. I am Dirk. I'm CEO at SprintHive, but I'm a techie at heart, so you'll see me do the tech stuff in the talk.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah. So what our business does, we are a digital onboarding company, but our specialty in the space is really automating to give you efficiencies, removing fraud or mitigating fraud in the process. And one of our proud stats that we play back to our customers is that in the past 24 months, 2 years,
Yeah.
Woolworths Financial Services experienced zero fraud in their digital
Identity
channel.
fraud.
Identity, yes, of course, in their digital channel. So imagine a financial services that tells you that for the past 2 years, they know exactly who their customers are, they can identify them, they can prove who they are, and they can potentially collect good money from them.
Yeah. Okay, so we were given this title, efficiencies. So like a good engineer, I decided to look up what's the definition of efficiency so that we can make sure the talk is accurate. And it's basically about getting the same productivity and eliminating waste, doing the same thing with less, doing more with less.
Yeah, and in this space, what we thought we would do, because we have built our own custom-built digital onboarding service that gives you identity, income verification, and fraud detection. We're going to take our system and compare it to ChatGPT 4.0, show you what that space does and what we do, and how do we get the efficiencies that we do.
Yeah. So what does efficiencies look like today? So in the past, we had these rooms full of people going through documentations, looking at bank statements, looking at pay slips, sitting with calculators, scanning identity documents, looking for fraud in them. And there was hundreds and sometimes thousands of people in these call centers. And what we've done already is replace them with tens of data engineers and data scientists that builds AIs that replace or does this work more efficiently. That also means that the work can be repeated. So we do the training of the AIs in one case, and then we can repeat that at many banks. So we've done more than 2.5 million identity verifications, almost 2 million income verifications, and we've processed 7.5 million documents so far.
Yeah, I mean, if you just look at the stats, we did a calculation.
Yeah.
And we said that would have taken 300 employees 4.5 years to process the same amount of documents as we did, right? And these are documents that we can process easily in a month.
Yeah.
So those are the type of efficiencies that automation starts giving you, the user of AI start bringing into any organization. But on the point of getting lesser people to do work, people always ask the question, are we not getting people unemployed in a country with unemployment? The idea of it is that, well, our experience one is that we've never found any of our customers that automated that had to retrench people. They just move them to do more meaningful work, more value-adding work than getting them out of their jobs.
Yeah. The financial services providers always pick growth rather than cost reduction, because that's what you can do with people. You can choose to give better customer service, activate more sales. But we're not here to talk about the efficiencies of today. We want to talk about the efficiencies of tomorrow. So, no, go on back. You're going too fast for my slow today. So can we replace those data scientists and those data engineers, the 30 people that we've 10x'd already or 100x'd already at SprintHive, and get it down to 3? Can the new Uber AIs do everything people say? Are they going to replace everyone? So So what we did is, we can welcome to the new Omni multimodal AIs. So OpenAI recently launched the ChatGPT 4.0, which stands for Omni. I asked ChatGPT what ChatGPT 4.0 is, and there's the whole big explanation. But basically, it is the new AI trained to be multimodal. It can take video, it can take documents, it can take sound, and not just text. So we wanted to put it to the test. So what we're going to present to you is the good, the bad, and the ugly in our quick experiment in can GPT 4.0, gain way more efficiencies. And by the way, all the images and all the text in this whole presentation was generated by GPT 4.0.
And here what we did, because in our organization we source bank statement from other entities like the DEA directly from the banks, or the user would normally give an organization their 3-month bank statement and pay slip. So we took a bank statement, plugged it on ChatGPT, and then we are going to prompt it to give us answers that our AI normally looks for in this document.
And just for all the compliance people, it's completely anonymized bank statements. There's no no PII data was shared, and we'll get into that later. So basically, uploaded a bank statement. This is a machine-readable bank statement, and also for full disclosure, this is a very nice bank statement. It's a salaried employee that gets paid at the end of the month, and the description had the word salary in it, so it's the easiest bank statement. And we said, given this bank statement, can you give me the name of the person, the address, and how much he earns every month? And ChatGPT, slowly, but did spit out, there's the account holder, that is correct, the address, that is correct, the account number was correct, and the monthly earnings was correct. So that was really impressive. I mean, I was not expecting that result. This is something that we find is a hard thing to do. So in our system, we have an OCR engine. So ChatGPT has, in this case, done what the OCR engine should do and read all the text in the document. It's also classified the document as a bank statement, knew what type of document it was. It then read the bank statement data from what I can see, because it got the name and the address and the earnings there, and it's calculated the income correctly. So it's in our world, that's almost 3 machine learning models that's already been replaced by 1 model. So it's a quite impressive feat. We have another AI at the end that marks the work of all the other AIs to make sure we don't make a mistake. So I'm asking ChatGPT to do that itself and saying, how did you determine these 3 earnings? And it gave a very reasonable explanation. It said that the description was consistent, that earnings tend to happen at the end of the month, and that these transactions all happen at the end of the month. So I'll be very generous and say it did some confidence verification there as well, sort of marking its own work.
I mean, at this point, I started asking Dirk that as an investor in the company, is my investment secured, or should I start looking at other opportunities in the market, right?
Yeah. At this point, this was the first bank statement we tried as well, so at this point I was proper scared. So we said, well, let's try something a bit harder, like how much does this person spend on groceries every month? And ChatGPT quickly spat out, these are the transactions with Pick and Pay, these are the transactions with ShopRite, and these are the transactions with Checkers.
The only challenge we found here is that ChatGPT couldn't pick up the mom and pop shops, right? The
jumping
unpopular
ahead now, the bad. Yeah, but I mean, the feat here is also quite impressive. It could use the descriptions in the bank statement to know that this is a transaction with Pick and Pay, this is a transaction with ShopRite. And they were not all very cleanly written. So the LLM understood the tokens and worked it out. It also knew that these organizations were suppliers of groceries. Yeah. So it had categorized the transactions, but also identified the third party involved, which again replaces 2 machine learning models on our side. Obviously, we have to integrate with other systems. So I said, well, ChatGPT, can you please format this output in the JSON format? And it very quickly complied, and it's very neatly formatted JSON. So we can integrate using GPT-4. We do want analytical data from bank statements. So I said, please include the transaction data in the JSON. And these are the only prompts I gave it. You see everything I said, we did nothing else. It quickly included all the transactional data. The transaction, for some reason, didn't include like running totals and things, so I just added that. And now The next thing we do is we identify transaction types, like is it a card transaction, is it a fee, is it a debit order? So I asked it to do that. There's the prompt, and it quickly added the transactional data to it. The first couple looked pretty accurate, so tick, another thing done. Can you see any failed transactions in the account? And it found only 3, there were 7, so less than half. So we give it a question mark on the scorecard there, not a tick, but it found some. And then we said, would you suspect this account of being a profile builder? This is a very complicated neural net that we have that detects profile building in bank statements. And it gave a very long, like a wall of text, scroll on what could be things to check. But in the end, it said it couldn't do that. So at least there's some value we still add. Yeah. So the good, the bad, and the ugly. So that's the best possible picture. And at this point, we're thinking, well, SprintHive could be 3 people from now on, and a big ChatGPT. But then you go into the data. So as Thuso was saying,
yeah, so here, I mean, if you look at what ChatGPT detected, it's what we highlighted in red, right? To measure the transaction it found. But the transactions that are not marked, it's what it didn't pick up. So there's a lot of stuff that it still needs to learn and go in with it. But like any other system, the more data you feed it, the better it becomes.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's of the nature of the tool. It's an LLM trained by all the information on the internet. There are information about Pick n Pay and ShopRite and Checkers, but the local butchery and those things don't have a big presence. There's not journalists writing about it. Their stock prices and their CEO changing doesn't rate the news. So it really won't ever learn that unless we train it. But then we get back to that point where now we have 30 data scientists training ChatGPT to recognize things that we want. So we sort of, I would say, take our tick to a question mark where it's good but not good enough for especially building models around that categorized data. So next thing, I gave it a bit of a harder bank statement. We were planning to go harder, like a irregular earner, like a waiter, and a domestic worker that works in multiple homes and things like that. We see in South Africa a lot. This one was just a normal weekly earner, so we added the bank statement, and it sort of lost the plot. It just said the bank statement is monthly, and I don't know what monthly is. Yeah. But I thought, okay, let's give it a bit of help. I mean, it's got nothing. So I said, this person is a weekly wage earner, so please redo the work. And it said, the monthly earnings now is weekly earnings varies. So it gave me words that make sense, which is what an LLM is supposed to do, but it didn't actually use the facts it did before to say, hey, a weekly earner gets paid weekly, and I found these transactions in a weekly setting. Next, I gave it a bank statement that was just a scan of a bank statement, not the bank original that was anonymized. It said, could not find text in this document. So we're going to deduct points of the OCR as well if it can only read machine readables. We gave it a definitely faked ID document that we use for testing purposes. And we say, can you detect whether it's fake? It gave us good explanations of what to do. It says basically contact Home Affairs, they'll tell you, which is a correct answer. But I really wanted it to do the work, so we gave it some more clues to say, has the image been digitally manipulated, which obviously we did. And it had loads of analysis and walls of text, and at the end says, I don't know. So I thought I'd give it a much easier one. It's saying, was this face generated by an AI? And it was generated by ChatGPT. Yeah. So did you generate this face yourself? And it have a very good explanation on how to detect that, and looking for asymmetry, looking for background effects. Yeah. And then it said, okay, it'll do it. And it cropped out the face. To its credit, it noticed itself that it didn't crop out the right thing and said, wait, let me redo that. Cropped out the face again. It said, oh, it looks like I missed it again. It cropped out the face again. You can now just go again. It kept looking around the document for a face, and at the end, it was very nice and apologetic and said, sorry, I really can't help you. Please contact Home Affairs again.
Yeah, but I must say that the politeness of it is based on the prompt. How polite were you with the prompt?
Yes,
I suspect it might act like Siri. You know, if you're
Yeah.
not polite, it's not going to be polite with the responses.
All the images and all the prompts are on the slide, but you'll notice I can't help but treat it like a person. Can you please help me do this? Can you please generate a... I don't know why. I just feel like I need to be polite to it. Maybe I think it's going to be our overlord one day. Right, so now to the ugly. Back to our very impressive grocery expense classification. When we look at our our expense classification, the groceries only has 3 Pick n Pay transactions, and ChatGPT generated 4. So if we look at the actual bank statement, no, one on. Yeah, there is a transaction there for Checkers, and it's detected it for Checkers, and then just hallucinated and duplicated that in the Pick n Pay categorization. So it just created this transaction from scratch because it probably made sense. It thought there should be this many. Because the way it does is it looks at all the tokens in halves and predicts what should be the next token. And I suspect it said, oh, every month there's a thing here, there should be another transaction. So it just reused the Checkers one and said it was Pick n Pay. So in this case, it was generating some data for itself. If we carry on, if we look at those transaction types, it also did, I think, what the model thought would be reasonable, spread card transactions and debit orders evenly around in the bank statement. So these USSD payments were marked as card transactions. There's no evidence of that. The bottom right one, I find very impressive that ChatGPT could figure out from that description that it's old mutual group schemes and that it's an insurance product. But then it insisted that it's a debit order. Now, statistically, group schemes would be a debit order, but that's not guaranteed. So you can't classify something by probability. You have to have yes or no knowledge. So that debit order there is a bit also suspect. It's just what's the next reasonable token in the series, right? Okay. And then we gave it another Capitec bank statement where it just got the income completely wrong. We tried a whole bunch of stuff, so here I didn't go through the whole journey, but at the end I got so confused with what it's trying to do. I said, just print the first 10 transactions so I can see what you think is happening. And it completely hallucinated most of it. If you look at that second last transaction in the ChatGPT set, in the dark set, it has the description from the second transaction. It has a money in and a money out from 2 transactions that's next to each other, and the date of a third. So it just combined this and tried to make sense of something. So it just completely started inventing. So the hallucinations is quite a bit of a problem still. To be fair, our data scientists insisted that I give the proviso that we're using ChatGPT here because we wanted to do a quick presentation for a conference. If we use GPT-4 and we gave it a bunch of training data and a bunch of label data, we could reduce the hallucinations. You could never get rid of them entirely, but you would reduce them. But then why not then build a neural net model like we do today, which is accurate to 99.9%? So while GPT-4 can do more like this, it could do better. It's never going to, well, probably not now good enough. So then, lastly, like I said, compliance people, we're going to get there. I asked ChatGPT if it is POPI compliant. And it basically said yes, but with some provisos. The onus is on you to make sure the data is safe and that it's anonymized. But I thought it's a bit iffy asking it to mark its own work. So I asked Gemini, which is a different AI, also generated on huge amounts of data, is ChatGPT POPI compliant? And it said no, definitely not. So it got a very different answer, and it definitely said consult a lawyer. To be fair, I also thought POPI isn't as old as GDPR, anyway. And not as much has been written about it, so we rephrased the question and asked them both again, is ChatGPT, the 4.0 model, GDPR compliant? And as you would suggest, guess, GDPR is very yes, ChatGPT 4 is, and again, no, it isn't. It does, Google did cite, or Gemini did cite a whole bunch of articles that very clearly lay out why not. The problem is all input becomes training data. So you can say to GPT, to OpenAI, that file I gave you, don't put it in your training set, but your interactions with it is part of the training set. So the model learns through your actions. So if you give it PII, it will become part of the learning data. All data, I also asked it, does data go to America? All data does go to America, which already basically makes it non-compliant. The other issue is fixing of errors. You know, Poppy says you have the right to fix errors. A customer has the right to complain and say, fix this. In a model like that, you can't. There's no way to tell the model, hey, stop thinking this, start thinking another way. And it's a whole training cycle. And the right to be forgotten. Once you're in that model, you're in that model. A whole new model needs to be trained for the right to be forgotten. So can the AI replace the series of neural nets at the moment that we use in financial services? I don't think for analysis, maybe for customer interaction, there's lots of other areas, but our areas that we specialize in, document processing, regulatory compliance, you know, those few small hallucinations, that 80% accuracy, that could be a regulatory fine. So we don't think, not yet. So I use this graphic, and for comic relief, one more slide. I wanted to generate a graphic of a guy sitting in the back of the car asking the AI, are we there yet? But they got the grammar wrong, and now the AI is asking, are we there yet? So then I thought, okay, great. It could actually work if the man says, no, not yet. So I said, the man answers, no, not yet. But somehow the man's now in a car far ahead. So I think this illustrates nicely how the hallucinations work. It remembered all the rules. The man needs to be in the back seat, but now the man's in the back seat in a different car with his head sticking out the window like a dog. Okay.
So, I mean, at this point,
Yeah.
two ways to do this is either we take questions or we ask you to give us prompts that you want us to run on ChatGPT on the bank statement and see what it gives us back, right? And this can be your typical questions that any credit provider would ask of their employees to extract the data from the bank statement.
Yeah. So anybody have a question? See what it can figure out?
Yeah. Sure.
I think I'll just be taking from what we spoke about earlier. Since I'm from Botswana, what would our sorry about that, everybody.
I hope you can hear me.
Yeah.
I'll just reiterate. I got a chance to speak to Thuso earlier in the team, and he actually demoed this to me. I think my question now that I've seen the full effect of what this is since I'm from Botswana and we might have issues with regulations as to connecting to all of the systems for doing those checks, is there something that, since I'm going back and I'm going to have to address this with the relevant people, what would you suggest, how do you suggest I go about introducing this into the fintech landscape that side? Because like I'm saying, I foresee a problem with my government letting us integrate into these systems, i.e. they are right now trying to do digitalization of their government systems, meaning that they are the ones who are in charge of doing all of that. So our innovators are going to be stifled in the sense that they might not be given access to the platform, but I can see how the platform can also help, even though the integration wouldn't be direct. I know of APIs that can be built to try at least bridge the gap between connecting directly to the government systems. So is that something that the GPT will be able to do? Maybe now just working with that layer that doesn't directly connect to the government platforms?
So
Thank you.
let me deal with it as a salesperson.
Okay.
Right? Yeah. A few years back, I got an opportunity to work with Safaricom in King, and they invited me to speak at a conference where it was about digital and saving information on the cloud, right? And the lucky part of it was that most of the people in the room were coming from government. They were officials and regulators. And I asked people the following questions. I said, how many of you are on LinkedIn? Everybody raised their hands. I said, how many of you are using WhatsApp? Everybody raised their hand. And then I asked them, what data are you protecting? What are you actually regulating? Because you're the very same person who regulates. Your data is gone. It's sitting somewhere. Instead of looking into how things have advanced and adjusting yourself to accommodate that and enable innovation, people tend to want to protect their territories. So whether Botswana is ready for this or not, at the speed, as Lee said earlier on, at the speed we're seeing fintechs and innovation coming out of the continent, either the government is going to choose to be an enabler of innovation or is going to be forced to allow people to innovate. So it's inevitable, it's going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, South Africa has pretty strong regulation as well. I'm not that familiar with Botswana, but most regulations say that you need to protect the data you can move it across the border if the other side is equally protected. So South African data can move to Europe because GDPR has the same protections as POPI ensures. But for your innovation, it would be better to use services that can be hosted in a specific location where you can control where the data goes. And that's why we had those end slides with ChatGPT. The data will go to America, so it is not, it's gonna, and their law says that the government has the right to look at it, you know. So it is, it's location based. So if Europe is good enough, you can still host there's some services, cloud services in South Africa now. So it's about where you host these AIs, and something like ChatGPT you can't self-host, so you don't have that option. I think we'll struggle. I wouldn't, as a regulator, allow ChatGPT to move POPI data or PII data. Nobody has a question we want to try and ask the AI about a bank statement?
No. No?
Nothing adventurous.
Okay. Yeah.
Everybody wants coffee.
Yeah, the surprise was that the person who was going to ask us a question, they were going to walk away with a gift, so I guess I get to keep it. That's still a gift.
All right.
Yeah.
And
Oh.
there we go.
Yeah.
Yay. There's a question.
Thank you. Not that I want the gift, by the way.
You'll still get it.
Yes, I'm Nonhlanhla from Swaziland. One of our requirements when you apply for a loan is that you tell us about your income and expenditure. So I would like us to ask ChatGPT if they can tell us how much money is saved, or how like the income and expenditure of this particular client and how much is there, so that we can see if the customer is eligible maybe in the event they apply for a loan.
Okay.
Thank you.
Just prompted for total expenditures.
Total income.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh no, you should say please. You also didn't capitalize.
So
Still thinking? This is the normal speed of ChatGPT. It's not
Yeah.
bad internet connection. LLMs do this. Yeah, you can scroll, yeah. So it's found the income transactions.
yeah.
There's additional interest received. The total expenditures is money out.
So it then gives us the income again.
Yeah, it relists the same things, and then it has the extra small amounts. So the total for the 3 months is 64. He didn't say please. No, you're not
Yeah.
kidding. It's exactly. If you said please, you would have gotten expenditures. Is it twirling? I can't see on the.
No, it's not really.
It's still thinking. Probably another good reason not to use it in production. The customers are waiting.
So, I mean, for me, that's the small stuff that shows us that the innovation we carry in the organization is good enough, and there's still a lot of opportunity in the space, right? Yeah.
So I think the uses, there are useful places to use it, but it's probably more in the back office in data enrichment. So, you know, we asked it to suggest, you know, categorizations for earnings in payslips, whether we think it's recurring or not. So it's good at data labeling, and then we have humans going through that. Yeah, but it's not ready for.
No.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
I think we're also out of time.
Yeah.
Yeah. People want coffee.
Yeah.
Okay. But doesn't do it. Yeah.
And we know definitely this document is tampered with
Yeah,
because
yeah,
we had
we
to
tampered
anonymize
with
it.
it.
Yeah, yeah. But
Okay.
thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.